what she saw. Rosario Mendoza liked routine. At exactly 10 every night, she made herself chamomile tea, locked her apartment door twice, and stood beside the living room window before bed. She liked watching the street below, the passing headlights, the old couple walking their dog, the drunk university students arguing outside the convenience store. It reminded her that the world was still alive. And lately, Rosario needed that reminder. Rosario. Magdalena dragged out her name dramatically as she leaned against the kitchen counter at Comida Típica La Original. You know Hector from your building? Rosario glanced up while chopping cilantro. The painter? Magdalena smirked. They say he's spending a lot of time with Senora Vidal lately. Several of the women immediately looked over. Rosario rolled her eyes. People spend time together. Magdalena leaned closer. Apparently in her bedroom. The kitchen erupted in laughter. Rosario laughed too. Well, she said carefully, I did see them together. Everyone went quiet. Magdalena's eyes widened. Doing what? Rosario hesitated. In truth, she'd only seen Hector sitting inside Julia Vidal's car outside the grocery store. They had been laughing about something. But Rosario remembered the way Hector leaned slightly toward her. The way Julia touched his arm while laughing. And suddenly, Rosario enjoyed the attention everyone was giving her. So she added, I saw them kissing. The women exchanged looks instantly. Ay, Dios mío. Rosario smiled weakly and went back to cooking. 2 weeks later, Rosario stood at her apartment window holding a cup of tea when she saw the black SUV pull up. At first, she barely paid attention. Then someone screamed. Help me! Rosario nearly dropped her mug. 2 men were dragging another man across the pavement. The victim fought desperately, shoes scraping violently against the concrete. One of the attackers shoved the victim into the SUV. He shut the door and then suddenly looked upward, directly toward Rosario's window. That's when Rosario recognized him. Hector, her next door neighbor. Her stomach tightened instantly. For one horrible second. Their eyes met. Rosario immediately ducked away from the window, heart pounding violently in her chest. No, 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 no. She shut the blinds so quickly, one of the hooks snapped loose. She then heard the SUV speeding away. Rosario stood frozen. Then, a heavy pounding rattled the door. Rosario jumped so violently she nearly fell. The pounding continued. Rosario backed away slowly, breathing hard. Had Hector seen her? Another knock. Then slurred, mumbling. Oh, for God's sake, Harold. An irritated woman snapped outside. Rosario recognized Mrs. Jones immediately. A second later, she heard Mrs. Jones guiding her drunken husband towards their apartment. Rosario laughed shakily from relief. But the relief didn't last because Hector's face remained trapped in her mind, especially the expression he'd had when he looked up at her. The next morning, at work, the restaurant buzzed with noise and gossip like always. Orders shouted, oil sizzling. Usually, Rosario loved participating in the gossip. Today, she kept her head down and avoided everyone's eyes. At around noon, Magdalena suddenly appeared beside her. "Did you hear?" Rosario immediately felt cold. "Hear what?" Magdalena lowered her voice dramatically. "It's Hector." Rosario's grip tightened around the knife in her hand. "What about him?" "He's dead." Rosario stared at her. "They found him 3 blocks from your building, shot twice." The kitchen noise suddenly felt distant, like Rosario was underwater. Magdalena leaned closer. "I think it has to do with what you told us, remember?" Rosario said nothing. "And you know what else?" Magdalena continued. "Julia Vidal is missing." Rosario felt sick. Magdalena studied her face carefully. "You okay?" Rosario forced a laugh. "Just tired." That afternoon, Rosario returned home exhausted. As she reached her apartment door, a man stepped out from the hallway shadows. "Rosario Mendoza?" Her pulse quickened. The man held up a badge. "Inspector Sanders." Rosario immediately looked away. "I don't know anything." Sanders tilted his head slightly. "That's interesting," he said calmly. "I haven't asked you anything yet." Rosario felt her stomach drop. Inside the apartment, Sanders questioned her gently. Had she seen anything unusual? Anyone suspicious? Rosario answered carefully. Sanders noticed. "You seem nervous," he said. "I don't like police." "That so?" Rosario forced a laugh. "You make people nervous." The inspector smiled slightly. Then Sanders paused. "You knew Hector?" "Not really." "Funny. Neighbors usually know each other." Rosario forced a shrug. "He mostly kept to himself." Sanders studied her quietly for a moment before standing. "If you remember anything, call me." After he left, Rosario locked the door twice. She went to make coffee just to calm her nerves. Then she heard it. Someone was knocking at her door. Rosario froze. Slowly, she approached the peephole, and her blood turned cold. Hector stood outside, perfectly still. His eyes were fixed directly at the door. Rosario stumbled backward in terror. "No!" The knocking continued, this time louder. Then a voice. "Ma'am, sorry, I forgot my keys." "Inspector Sanders." Rosario looked toward the coffee table. His keys were sitting there. When she opened the door, Sanders frowned slightly. "You all right?" Rosario nodded quickly. After he left, she looked down the hallway searching for Hector. but the hallway was completely empty. The sightings continued after that. At first, they were brief. A reflection behind her in a microwave door. A silhouette sitting at the back of the restaurant. Someone standing across the street at night. Always Hector. Always watching. Rosario could feel herself spiraling out of control. Every sound inside her apartment made her jump. One afternoon, while cooking dinner, she decided to play some music to lighten the mood. The radio was playing her favorite upbeat Spanish music while she chopped vegetables. For a moment, she almost felt normal again. Then the music warped. The singer's voice stretched unnaturally slow. You lied. Rosario stopped breathing. Hector died because you lied. The plate slipped from her hands and shattered across the kitchen floor. Rosario burst into tears instantly. The police eventually uncovered what had happened to Hector and Julia Vidal, and the rumor of their findings quickly found its way to Comida Típica La Original. Did you hear? Magdalena leaned over the prep station, her voice a jagged whisper. The police went into Hector's place last night. Rosario's knife stuttered. Yeah? They found a painting, Magdalena said, eyes gleaming. It was wrapped up in brown paper like a gift. They said it was a portrait of Julia. There was a card attached. The kitchen went dead silent. Even the sizzle of the grill seemed to fade. It said, Magdalena continued, to my dear husband, I hope you know I'm yours forever. Happy 20th anniversary. Love, Julia. Magdalena shook her head, clicking her tongue. She was just having a portrait painted for him. That's why they were spending time together. The cilantro under Rosario's knife was a green smear. Her knees almost gave out under the weight of the realization. Months later, neighbors in Rosario's building still complained about strange noises from her apartment. Crying, talking, apologies whispered through the walls late at night. When paramedics finally entered the apartment after a wellness check, they found Rosario sitting silently at her kitchen table. Across from her, an empty chair had been pulled out, and on a nearby table, facing directly toward Rosario, sat a finished portrait. A painting of Hector Ramirez, smiling softly at her.